It is a truth universally acknowledged that July is for all things Jane Austen. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack. If you're not new, welcome back to Spread Book Joy. And today it's my plans for my favourite readathon, Jane Austen July. And of course, it's just what it sounds like. It's an entire month devoted to reading the work of and about the life of and anything related to Jane Austen. Also watching some Jane Austen stuff, so I couldn't be happier. This is my favourite readathon. It's the first readathon I ever took part in before I even had a BookTube channel, and I absolutely love it because I always had an interest in Jane Austen, but this has just kind of deepened and enriched my love of her writing, my understanding of her life, and it just made me very, very happy. So I love this whole month devoted to just getting completely swept up in her work, in her life, and in all the sorts of homages to her through adaptations, through retellings, and yeah, I just absolutely love this month. So just want to put a quick thank you out to the amazing hosts. They are Marissa from Blatantly Bookish and Katie from Books and Things, and recent years they've been joined by Claudia from Spinster's Library. They're all amazing booktubers with an absolutely almost encyclopedic knowledge of Jane Austen. So yeah, thank you to all three hosts for hosting again this year. I absolutely love this readathon, and I also want to say congratulations to Marissa for welcoming your little baby recently into the world. So I'm glad your baby has made it in time for Jane Austen July. There are some challenges for Jane Austen July, and there are some read-alongs, so I'm going to tell you about them all starting now. The first challenge is pretty much the main challenge, and that is to read one of Jane Austen's complete novels. She only wrote 6 novels, complete novels, in her lifetime, and what are 6? They're amazing. So you can choose from Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park, Persuasion, Northanger Abbey, and Emma. So I have read all of them now. I finished, the last one that I hadn't read was Mansfield Park, and I finished that not last year, the year before, I think. Can't remember now. But it's not my favourite, but I will reread it at some point because a lot of Jane Austen's work is very rewarding on a reread. Emma started off as a book that I absolutely could not stand when I was younger, and on every subsequent read I've enjoyed it even more, to the point that when I ranked my novels finally, and I'll put that in the description box as well, it came second in my rankings. I don't know what's going to happen this year. I'm rereading Northanger Abbey. This is my first reread of Northanger Abbey, and the reason I'm doing that is because it is the first group read being hosted over on Goodreads by the hosts. They're going to be reading Northanger Abbey from the 1st to the 10th of July, and that is because it's a short novel, so it's well worth taking part in if you've never tried Austen before. I think it's a nice light introduction to Austen. It's possibly one of her funniest novels. I think it's really hilarious, and it is a coming of age story. It's about Catherine Morland, who is 17. She's the youngest protagonist that Austen writes about. She is taken off to Bath by some friends to experience the season in Bath, which is parties and carriage rides and all sorts of lovely things that a young person could want to take part in. And she is a bibliophile of epic proportions. She is obsessed with books and particularly Gothic novels, and so her imagination starts to run wild when she's invited back to the home of the Tilneys. So yeah, I loved Northanger Abbey, and I'm really looking forward to rereading it and just taking it. I think I might do the amazing audiobook. Juliet Stevenson does a brilliant audio, and she is very, very funny, so I'd highly recommend that if you want to go down the audiobook route. But yeah, I like Northanger Abbey. A lot of people don't, so try it, make of it what you will, but I think if you go into it with your eyes open, that it's a coming of age novel, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by it. The other book I want to read, the other one of the big 6, which is well overdue a reread for me, is Sense and Sensibility. I was a toss up between rereading Emma, which I was so tempted to do, and reading Sense and Sensibility, which is like 4th in my rankings, whereas Emma is 2nd. But I loved the Ang Lee film Sense and Sensibility for years and years and years, and that has some differences to the book, but I'm going to try rereading Sense and Sensibility. It's the story of Marianne and Eleanor Dashwood, two sisters, and it starts off with their father dying and they don't inherit anything. Their older half-brother from their father's first marriage inherits the estate, and he leaves them with very little to live on, which is a big theme in Jane Austen's books, because if you read anything about her life, I think it's kind of a similar thing. She was reliant on the goodwill of relatives and brothers and people because she remained unmarried in her lifetime, and as a woman, an unmarried woman, you were kind of, especially of that class, you were relying on the generosity of relatives to take care of you because you didn't own property, you couldn't work. So yeah, this is kind of a bit of a theme that runs throughout her books. So there is romance in Sense and Sensibility as well. I do have a lot of love for it, but I think mainly because in my head the Ang Lee film is always there. But yeah, I'm going to reread Sense and Sensibility mainly because it's part of my reading Southwest project. So it's called, I'm calling it Southwest Stories, and they are, when they are given, kindly offered a cottage to live in by one of their mother's relatives, and that is in Devon. So yeah, it's part of my Southwest Stories project. So Sense and Sensibility is my other main big six read this year. Challenge number 2 is to read some of her other works. Now, you can read some of her unfinished work, which is Sanditon. You could read Lady Susan, which is brilliant, and I would highly recommend if you haven't read it. I loved Lady Susan, read it for the first time last year, and it is scandalous. So yeah, very short, very sweet epistolary novel. And I say sweet, it's not sweet at all, but yeah, it's a fantastic read. I loved it, really loved it. Lady Susan is a despicable character. So yeah, that's a really good one. You can also read some of her juvenilia, which is the work that she wrote when she was younger. None of it got published, it was all just sort of short stories and things like that, and that is the other group read actually. So from the 11th, I think, right through to the end of July, they're going to be reading a different daily, a different part of her juvenilia. And if you look in the I think in Katie's announcement video, at least, she's got links to where you can read each of the stories for free, and so she's got them all listed in the dates they're going to be reading them on, and then where you can find it for free online. So for that, I am going to try and read some of the juvenilia. I've not had much success with it in the past, but I think I might try and read just a few of the stories that I've not tried before. So yeah, the juvenilia is what I'm going to be doing for the second part of the challenge. Challenge number 3 is to read some non-fiction about Jane Austen, about her life or about the time. So I think I've read pretty much enough about Jane Austen's life in the last few years, but I am interested in reading Jane Austen, A Life in Small Things by Paula Byrne, because it sounds like it presents her life story in a slightly different way. So I might try that. But what I'm really interested in trying is Lucy Worsley's Courtiers, which is about the life of the Georgian royal court. So yeah, if I can get that on audiobook, I'm going to attempt that one, I think, though I've never managed to do all 7 of the challenges. We'll see. This year might be different, we'll see. Challenge number 4, last year this changed. It used to be just retellings, and last year they added in historical fiction to it. So for challenge 4, you can read any of the sort of modern day retellings of Jane Austen, and they fall into a couple of categories. Claudia always says they fall into sort of the fan fiction category, which is where you see the story being extended or told from another point of view. No, the story being sort of extended, like we find out what happened to this character or that character. What was the one that I really didn't like? There was one about Mary Bennet. Didn't really care for it. It was really boring. I didn't like it. But I really did like Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. So yeah, there's tons of really interesting retellings or extensions, I suppose, these fan fiction style things, which are well done. I like Longbourn by Joe Baker. Was it Joe Baker? I really like Longbourn. Longbourn is Pride and Prejudice retold from the perspective of the servants in Longbourn, so I really enjoyed that. But that story wasn't focused on the Pride and Prejudice main characters. They were just kind of background to the story. So I found that really interesting because it kind of focused on the working class people within the house, the servants that you never see in Jane Austen. So that was really interesting. What I prefer is, and last year I got really excited, is the historical fiction element. So you can read some historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. So they're not going to be too prescriptive about like exact years of her life and, you know, her lifetime, but yeah, so you're looking at the rough sort of 1780s to the 1820s, really. So any historical fiction set around that. Last year I read Kindred by Octavia Butler, and that was fantastic. I'd highly recommend that if you have never read Kindred before, because it is science fiction, and it's set a woman in the 70s. She travels back and forth through time to a plantation in 1800s Maryland. So she's a black woman in the 70s, and she's, yeah, it's an amazing book. So this year I've decided, again, part of my reading like Southwest Stories project, I'm going to read The Trumpet Major by Thomas Hardy. That's the plan, if I get to it. But The Trumpet Major is Hardy's only historical fiction work, and it is set during the Napoleonic Wars. It's not set in Devon, but it is the Southwest. It's in Weymouth. So that's my pick for the historical fiction challenge. I also read War and Peace last year, so that kind of counted because I was reading that during Jane Austen July, so that's set in the same era. So any historical fiction, the historical fiction doesn't need to be modern historical fiction, as I've just mentioned. Hardy is not modern, but set in 1804, I believe, in Weymouth. Challenge number 5 is to read a contemporary of Austen, so a book published within her lifetime by one of her contemporaries. And this challenge is the challenge that I have failed on year after year after year. I've not even been able to crack open a book and attempt it. I've done all the other challenges, never done this one. So this is my announcement kind of for this. Well, actually, it's not an announcement. I have decided that to keep myself to this challenge, I'm going to try and host a read-along of the book. The book I've chosen is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's a book I've always wanted to read, never read it, and there's a very specific way I want to read it. I want to read it using the Audrey app, and I've got a whole video on Audrey. I'll put that in the description box below, but the Audrey app is one of the most unique audiobook experiences that I think I've seen around, and they're a very small company. They're UK based, I believe, but I think you can get the app in America as well. I'm not sure where else in the world you can get Audrey, but I'll put links in the description box to all of this. And they have got Frankenstein. So I said the next classic that they had available that I want to read, I would read it on Audrey. So you can purchase it on Audrey for £3.99, not sure what it costs elsewhere. And what's unique about the Audrey app is you listen to the audio and then you have a guide. So the guide is written and curated by an expert in the author or the book, and the guide puts together information about the story, the book, all sorts of things that you might want to find out, and you get access to the guide chapter by chapter as you listen. And there's a guide to the characters, there's a synopsis of each chapter at the end. They've even got things like a playlist on Spotify to access that the guide will have put together for you, so like a curated playlist of music that you can listen to as well. So it just a stunning, beautiful app, and it's aesthetically beautiful. So I'll just put some pictures up here while we're talking. But yeah, check out my video on Audrey. You don't have to listen along with Audrey, but that's my plan. And my plan is I'm going to do that from, I think, around the 15th or 17th. I'm going to put out an announcement video about it if I get enough interest. I am going to be reading it with Ange from Ange's Book Chatter. She's not co-hosting. I wouldn't want to put that pressure on her, unless you want to, Ange, of course. But I'm at least going to be reading it with Ange, if not with a whole group of people. I plan on doing it on Voxer if we had a group. So let me know in the comments if you're interested. If you are, if enough people comment and you're interested, I will put an announcement video out. So yeah, that's my challenge 5, and that's how I'm going to keep myself accountable for challenge 5. Challenge 6 is to watch a direct screen adaptation. I know exactly what I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch Ang Lee's Sense and Sensibility, and I'm going to watch the BBC Sense and Sensibility that I have never seen. So I'm going to watch those. Challenge number 7 is a modern screen adaptation. Now, there are tons and tons of web series. Katie from Books and Things has an excellent video where she goes through her favourites. I'm going to link that in the description box as well. But I'm thinking of trying one of these because I've never tried one of these web series, but possibly the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Or there's Eleanor and Marianne Tate Barton, which is another web series, but that's based on Sense and Sensibility. There's also a film called Fire Island, which is based on Pride and Prejudice, which I've heard amazing things about from all of the hosts, and it's an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, but it is 6 gay men on a holiday, basically. So yeah, I am really, I've heard amazing things about it. So that's another one that might get a watch from me. I'm going to have some Jane Austen July content out this year. I should have more time to do that this year. So fingers crossed. Yeah, and I'm hoping that you will get to see me doing some different things for Jane Austen July this year. So tell me, are you taking part in Jane Austen July? Do you fancy reading Frankenstein for challenge number 5 with me? And if so, let me know in the comments. If you've got this far, you maybe drop a Frankenstein's monster in the comments from the emojis, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Bye!